I want to tell you my story, and I actually decided to not prepare a deck and make it more personal because I want to make sure that as you see me, you see you. That the only separation we have is obviously the monitor. But I come from a very humble family, very little financially. Both my parents have less than an elementary education. Life has not been easy, like it hasn't been probably for many of you, especially now with the situation we have right now with COVID-19. I personally have had to overcome lots of obstacles moving from a very small town in Mexico to the US, where I actually was born and I didn't know, not knowing the language, building, um, in essence, an organization with very little resources, marrying really young, divorcing, raising a child on my own, you name it. The struggle has been real. And the struggle to actually uh, move up the ladder in my professional endeavors has been even more difficult. Um, I tried everything and it felt like a failure. I felt like a failure. I didn't have the right people, the right resources, or even the knowledge to make significant progress. So today I want to share with you how I was able to overcome all that and create a roadmap to empowerment. So in this particular moment, just sharing a couple principles that have helped me get there. And I think principle one was deciding on what was going to be my passion in life. I had many passions, but the day I decided to change my personal and professional trajectory, the energy of my life circle changed. And in just 3 years, I actually achieved lifetime long-term goals. First, I focused on giving that greater results at my job. I learned how to get promoted and how to get to that higher pay. I shared my method with others and we created an efficient team. And then my team began to be recognized and companies began searching for me and my talents. During that career trajectory as a recruitment manager, I improved my methodology. I began to implement it by focusing on what I was really passionate about, and that was helping people who had potential but were stuck in survival jobs. And that methodology that I came up with, it freaking worked. Each person that followed the plan that I gave them manually actually got a better job. They got better pay, they got promoted, and every single one of those wins felt like a trophy to me. Their gratitude, it filled me with satisfaction. And similarly, the managers who hired them were really pleased. And because now they had a team that was more diverse, they had reduced their turnover, and they were even looking at candidates internally that had gone overlooked for years. So I finally felt like I was living the mission of my life. My commitment to the growth of people really felt like an incredible opportunity to do something in this world, especially with people who had so much to offer, that were talented, but they didn't have the mentor, the guide to follow, or simply the transparency for management to guide them into the hiring and promotion process. So I knew that I had to drive that kind of cultural and intellectual shift required to make that progress I wanted to see. But I wanted that impact to be at scale. I couldn't just do it one-on-one because the impact was really little. Even though it still fulfilled my heart, I felt like I could do more. I realized that it had to be technology. So I prepared. And in that preparation, I drove my career in delivering technical implementations and integrations. And I spent endless hours just testing this idea and this method that I had. And that's where principle two came into play. Making a plan and creating a goal that was aligned with my passion. I finally found the model that worked. I tested it over and over with my team, and we all got amazing results. And that motivated to test that same model with myself. And I kept thinking, like, what can I do to showcase that even with something as difficult as an album, right? A singer in Mexican traditional music, really difficult to do. Could I do it? So I went ahead and implemented that same plan. I said, what better way to have this model showcased through my talents and my vision, and see if that if when you have a plan, you have the passion and the network, it enriches that environment. So there's absolutely no way that there could be failure. Eventually, I saved enough money. I ended up doing my album with original content, a music video, presented the album in private parties to friends, etc. I even ended up opening for Kehlani here at the Fox in Oakland, my hometown. But over time, people kept asking me, Marta, how is it that you do so much with so little, right? In just 3 years, I was able to do this thing, start this company, create an album, write my own content, even launch a book. How? Well, that's where principle 3 comes into play. Remember, passion, align this big picture to my passion. And now it was about detailing a plan and making progress every day. No excuse. That's how I got this done. At work, things were incredibly difficult because I was in a very conservative environment. So even though I had this big dream, I'm going to start my company, I'm going to save money, I still had to deal with reality. I was in a very conservative environment, and decisions were only being accepted from people, well, from men, really, who had been working there for decades. So I got sick and I suffered from depression, anxiety, and a lot of loneliness. However, every time I felt that I was falling in the dark, I got up quickly because I knew I had a bigger purpose in life. Solving problems or facing adversity was not new to me. So I had to remind myself of that. I knew I could do it. My mind actually got used to seeing problems as learning experiences, and I quickly began thinking creatively about solutions the minute that I felt that pressure. So my energy soon influenced others within my community at work, and they began supporting my vision. Over time, I told them that I had a plan to impact the world and that I wanted to create this company, and even my boss started supporting me. So I started to save even more so that I could develop my idea. Now I had a name, madeBOS, made by own self. I turned every vacation into conferences, learning about equity crowdfunding. At the time, it was just an idea, learning about how to raise capital in Silicon Valley. I had never been exposed to that. And I got educated into the startup environment. I learned to ask for help. I developed a network of resources and even diversified my income. I started singing, making more money, giving leadership classes, consulting, and even doing leadership development for people on the side. So talk about side hustles. I really fell in love with the idea of changing lives at scale. So I had to make that happen. And that was what empowered me to visualize the future. I imagined a more beautiful, equitable future where no one has to give up the idea of becoming. And no matter what the circumstances and challenges presented. But I also had to be real that life happens, and it happens, as you already know. So I had to really refocus and identify that as part of life. And that's where this fourth principle came into play, that I was far away doing this big dream in a company that I wasn't necessarily as appreciated as I needed to. And regardless of how much my boss supported me, I still needed to make that change. So go full time for this big idea. So I came back home. I came back to family and to the community that really believed in me. And that's where the fourth one comes in. Finding those who love you, who push you, and who celebrate you. When I first started as a sales representative, this is long time ago, and this is where this idea of being in a community of support comes from. My boss personally gave me my first training because she actually believed in me, and she knew that I had a desire to excel. Unfortunately, no one else in the sales department took interest and wanted to necessarily know me. Even though I invited them on launch invitations and which was essentially the right thing to do, right? When you're a new employee and they invite you to lunch, you usually show up for people. That wasn't the case for me. But those that did support me, those that did take interest, were the people that were in the supportive roles, the account support, customer care, and the admin people, the customer service, the delivery team. And crazy enough, the majority were Latino or people of color. And they told me that they were so proud of me, of a Latina who was in sales, so young, making things happen. And that's where it all, sort of happened for me, and the trigger of having to be in a community of support of people that really believe in me. I had to remember that even in that time of adversity, when no one would give me a chance, that there was still a community that did. And that moment of being afraid to fail and let them down was really a push for me, that kept me going into really delivering the things that I wanted to do, especially back then in that sales environment. So just to give you, like how crazy I was about not letting them down, my first year in sales, I went in performance of 300 to 400% of my sales goals. And I was striving to win challenges and bonus incentives, all because I wanted this kind of result. I won the team eventually, and I gradually started training new employees and sharing my strategies. I quickly became promoted and even into better paid positions. So knowing how to knock on doors back then in sales and being rejected thousands of times, not being in an environment that celebrated me, all of that was, believe it or not, a great foundation for my personal development of resilience. I learned to be creative in seeking alternatives, and yes, creating a specific plan to not give up, refocusing my energies on objective factors, the things that I could do, the things I could change, like starting a company to make this happen. And finally, surrounding myself with people who believed in my mission and who believed in my vision, and that were inspired with the solutions that I was bringing to the table. Those 3 years that I used to really support this big vision that I had, and do the things that I never thought I could do, were the most critical in building social capital, and eventually to be able to start a company in the tech industry. I've invested all that I have. I've invested long hours, weekend savings, so on, you name it. Plus my experience really in managing various of teams, and even $1 million budgets, implementing, configuring, and even integrating more than 15 technological solutions and systems. All of that with the objectivity to be in a space where I could support people with their people and entrepreneurs with their talent strategies, the growth and development of their teams. To sum it up, there's always an alternative to achieve your goals. And this world really offers the opportunity for us to win. madeBOS, myself, we're an example of that. Against all odds, here we are, year 4. Every year we felt like we were dying. Year 3, we're like, wait a minute, there's something here. Year 4, we finally began monetizing. After so much work, year 4, we raised very little capital, all within my community, just people that I knew, $50 to $10 to $5,000 through equity crowdfunding. So it's time to start risking things, risking just a little bit of what you thought you didn't have, because that's how you're going to start seeing some of the wins that are going to build your journey into empowerment. I invite you to start thinking about, again, what your plan is going to be to get there. And if you have an opportunity to listen to my music, but more so read my chapter I have in the I Have What It Takes book, From Nopalera to CEO, you'll see that we all can be authors of empowerment books, but it's about how you take on this opportunity to drive your own success. that's going to make the difference. Thank you for your time.